We're live from New Delhi. You're watching the India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. The Colorado Supreme Court disqualifies former President Donald Trump from ballot in the state's presidential primary next year over his role in the Jan 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. United Nations Security Council delays vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members calls for addressing humanitarian situation in Gaza, but US says resolution fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. Venezuela and Guyana reach truce over territorial dispute, but their Latin American neighbors wonder how long truce will hold. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually interacts with finale participants of Smart India Hackathon late evening, highlights role of youth in nation building. South Africa level series 1-1 with the win in second ODI against India. Tony De Zorzi scores maiden ODI ton. Well, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that former President Donald Trump cannot be on the ballot in the next year's state presidential election due to his involvement in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. The 4-3 ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court makes Trump the first U.S. presidential candidate to be ruled ineligible for the presidency under a rarely used provision of the U.S. Constitution that prohibits officials from holding office if they have been part in a construction or rebellion. The Colorado court said the ruling is stayed until Jan 4, 2024 to allow for appeals. Trump's campaign called the court decision flawed and undemocratic and said it would be appealed. Also, New York Governor Kathy Hochul authorized a commission to consider repatriations for the state's role in perpetuating historic discrimination against African Americans, making New York the second U.S. state to launch such an effort. The state will not be required to follow the recommendations of the commission. New York lawmakers and civil rights activists who attended Hochul's signing ceremony at the New York Historical Society in Manhattan hailed it as a key step towards confronting the state's legacy of slavery and resulting racial gaps in wealth, employment, and criminal justice. The first U.S. state task force to research and develop repatriation proposals for African Americans was launched in California in 2020. Well, the United Nations Security Council has delayed a vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members say the move is vital to address the humanitarian situation in the Palestinian enclave, but the United States has expressed concerns that the text fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. William Denselor reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Tuesday was another frustrating day at the United Nations as diplomats continue to wrangle over the language in a draft resolution on the situation in Gaza. Earlier this week, we saw this draft presented that had a call for the urgent suspension of hostilities to allow safe and unhindered humanitarian access. But what we understand from reports is that the United States has had real issues with some of the language in this draft resolution and wants it watered down. It's understood that the draft included the phrase urgent steps towards a sustainable cessation of hostilities. It's understood that Washington has an issue with the reference to cessation of hostilities. So that has been a major stumbling block for diplomats at the United Nations. UN officials on Tuesday expressed the dire need for more humanitarian access into the Palestinian enclave. The UN estimates that around 85% of people in Gaza are now internally displaced. They warned that UN humanitarian groups working on the ground there are on the brink of collapse. UN officials say that the situation for civilians, they say that the impact has been unbearable for them, really imploring council members to come together and to pass a meaningful resolution to get more humanitarian access into the Gaza Strip and really try and see more protection of civilians going forward. We have heard on Tuesday from Robert Wood, who is the US Alternative Representative for Special Political Affairs. Now, he said to the press on Tuesday afternoon here in New York that efforts were continuing with other members of the Security Council to work on the draft text. He said, we'll see how discussions go. He says they're working on the issues and that we will see what happens. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, the United States said that they are working with countries on the United Nations Security Council to resolve outstanding issues related to a draft resolution.
We are engaging constructively with our colleagues on the Security Council to resolve outstanding issues related to that resolution. We fully support addressing the humanitarian needs of the people of Gaza, as this resolution should set out to do, and we're working through these issues with other countries on the Security Council.
And Iran-backed Houthi rebels have defied U.S. efforts to protect commercial ships in the Red Sea by promising more attack on vessels. The group says it will only stop if Israel suspends its military campaign in Gaza. Nick Harper reports for more from Washington.
The increase in attacks in the Red Sea has led the United States to create a multinational naval operation to try and counter the barrage of missiles and drones coming from the Houthis based in Yemen. The fear is the continued attacks on commercial vessels spread the current Israel-Hamas conflict further into the wider region. US Secretary of State Lloyd Austin announced the joint naval operation while in Bahrain, saying it was an international challenge that demands collective action. It's been nicknamed Operation Prosperity Guardian, with at least 9 other countries helping to take part in the patrols, including Bahrain, Canada, France and Italy. But despite that, the Houthis say attacks will continue, perhaps as often as every 12 hours, until Israel ends its fight against Hamas. The group also says more food and medicine needs to get to Palestinians in Gaza. The attacks have prompted some companies, including oil giant BP, to reroute their vessels away from the Red Sea, opting for routes that involve longer journey times and therefore increased costs. Oil prices have risen as a result of the news. About 12% of the world's shipping trade passes through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea each year. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And Guinea government has warned people to brace for power cuts as the country grapples with the aftermath of a deadly explosion at an oil terminal in the capital, Conakry, that destroyed fuel tanks and forced hundreds to flee damaged homes. 14 people were killed and 190 injured in the blast at the West African nation's main oil terminal, which rocked the Colombian district in downtown Conakry. In its first update on the extent of the damage to the terminal, the government said 13 fuel tanks were out of service while 5 tanks were unaffected. The extent of the fallout from the blast is not yet clear, or whether mining operations will be affected. Well, a territorial dispute in a corner of Latin America has sparked international alarm in recent weeks. There's now relief that Venezuela and Guyana have reached a truce, but their Latin American neighbors have been left wondering how long will it hold. DD India's Latin America correspondent Mary Trini Mena reports for more.
This was the handshake that signaled compromise. A pledge not to use force to resolve a dispute going back 100 years. The territory in question, the Essequibo, in the Amazon jungle, which counts for 2/3 of modern-day Guyana.
Agreed that Guyana and Venezuela, directly or indirectly, will not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, including those consequential to any existing controversies between the two states.
The border dispute began in the late 1800s when Guyana, a former British colony, established its borders. Ever since then, Venezuela has contested the legality of Guyana's boundaries. The Geneva Agreement of 1966 sought to settle the conflict.
El Acuerdo de Ginebra se firmó ese año.
The Geneva Agreement was signed that year, which sets out a practical and equitable agreement between the parties. Why has it not been solved? Because Guyana has always refused to negotiate.
In 2018, Guyana went further and took the dispute to the International Court of Justice, a court Venezuela doesn't recognize. Over the last decade, Guyana's oil output and revenues have grown dramatically. By contrast, Venezuela sank deeper into economic crisis. Caracas asserted its territorial claim more aggressively. In December, Venezuela held a referendum to approve the creation of a new Venezuelan state. Just days after the vote, President Maduro presented a new map adding the Essequibo, and he ordered state-owned companies to drill for oil and gas in the disputed region.
Venezuela
is talking about granting concessions for claimed areas that are mostly offshore, which is fundamentally where the problem lies. What is difficult is to find companies interested in an area that is in dispute.
The territorial dispute has alarmed Venezuela's neighbors, prompting Brazil to take a lead in negotiations. Some analysts say President Maduro is trying to create a distraction from his own economic problems and stroke national unity.
Even though I believe it's highly unlikely that this could end in a war or an armed conflict, you can't rule it out when a government is using and waving the flag of patriotism and nationalism in an effort to unite a country behind itself.
Which is why many fear the truce will not hold. For now, Venezuela is getting ready for a new meeting with Guyana over the Essequibo and upcoming presidential elections, both in 2024. In Caracas, Maritrini Mena, reporting for DD India.
And Brazilian First Lady Rosângela Janja Lula da Silva said on Tuesday she will sue Elon Musk-owned social media platform X after having her account hacked last week. The alleged hacker entered Janja's account on December 11th and posted several messages, including insults against the First Lady and President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. She also called on Brazil to regulate social media platforms, saying they must be held accountable for the users' actions. Lula agreed that social media regulation was needed globally, but voiced his concerns around the complexities of the issue. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a law allowing state law enforcement to arrest people suspected of crossing the U.S.-Mexico border illegally, giving local officers powers long delegated to the U.S. government, in a move likely to trigger legal challenges. The law will take effect in March and create a new state crime for illegal entry or re-entry into Texas, with penalties ranging from 180 days in jail to 20 years in prison. Texas magistrate judges will be required to order migrants return to Mexico, with up to 20-year sentences for those who refuse to comply. Attorney Vicky Gambra, legal advocacy director of the non-profit Houston Immigration Legal Services Collaborative, said the law could lead to racial discrimination. Abbott also signed a bill that would devote $1.5 billion to border wall construction and other operations. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Chinese Premier Li Qiang and Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin meet in Beijing to discuss bilateral relations and trade and agricultural cooperation. Stay with us to get the details. After it launched ballistic missiles, UN officials called on North Korea to comply with international law and urges Pyongyang to commit to denuclearization. French Parliament approves stricter provisions aimed at reducing welfare payments for foreigners in particular.
always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Khurana, and moving on. United Nations officials have called on North Korea to comply with international law after it launched ballistic missiles over the weekend. At a briefing on Tuesday, members of the UN Security Council urged Pyongyang to commit to denuclearization. But Russia and China criticized fellow members for being one-sided. Sally Patterson reports from New York, where the UN is headquartered.
North Korea now has weapons capable of reaching most points on Earth. That was the stark warning from UN Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Mohammed Khalid Kyari, on Tuesday. Pyongyang's intercontinental ballistic missile, launched on December 18th, flew around 1,000 kilometers before falling into the sea. Kyari said North Korea did not issue any warnings before the launch, calling that a serious risk to aviation and maritime traffic. He said it was imperative to de-escalate the situation on the Korean peninsula and urged Pyongyang to engage in diplomacy, not isolation. Several UN Security Council members called for North Korea to reopen lines of communication and to abandon its nuclear and ballistic missiles programs. The US's alternate permanent representative, Robert Wood, said every council member needed to condemn the missile launches and meaningfully hold Pyongyang to account. He called on Russia and China to join the rest of the council in doing so, while the UK accused those two countries of shielding their ally. But Russia accused the Council of being one-sided and, along with China, condemned the US's so-called show of force in the region. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that the military had asked for an additional 450,000 to 500,000 people to be mobilized into the army. At a news conference in Kyiv, the Ukrainian leader said his commanders were due to discuss this very sensitive issue of mobilization and that Parliament would then consider it. Zelensky said that conducting a mobilization at such a scale would require additional financing.
Their position on the General Staff meeting was that they proposed to mobilize an additional 450,000 to 500,000 people. This is a very serious number, and I said that I need more arguments to support this idea. This is a question about people, about justice, about defense capabilities, and a financial question.
Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also said he was confident the US would not betray his country by withholding crucial wartime funding as it fights off a Russian invasion. He also said he expected the European Union to approve a €50 billion aid package soon.
We are working very hard on this, and I'm certain the United States of America will not betray us. And that on which we agreed in the United States will be fulfilled completely. Regarding the European Union, well, everyone played their big cards and we reached one victory regarding the EU's €50 billion. I'm sure that we have already achieved all of this.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin awarded a group of soldiers who fought in Ukraine with the country's top Gold Star medals on Tuesday. The ceremony took place at the National Defense Command Center, Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement. Putin also visited a display of the latest Russian weapons and military equipment, accompanied by the Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. The exhibit presented various drones and small arms as well as vehicles for rough terrain and equipment for evacuation of wounded service personnel from the battlefield. After the ceremony, Putin spoke to the awarded soldiers and vowed to go till the end to protect Russia's interest. And Chinese Premier Li Qiang and Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin met in Beijing, where it was agreed that both sides should jointly safeguard energy security and ensure a safe and stable industrial chain and supply chain. The meeting took place on the first of a two-day visit by Mishustin to China's capital, where a memorandum of understanding to cooperate in the fields of anti-monopoly, anti-unfair competition and advertising was also signed. They pledged joint efforts to uphold the joint energy security of both nations, foster connectivity and strengthen people-to-people exchanges and cooperation. And for more, we have a correspondent, Andrew Wood, joining us from Hong Kong. Well, Andrew, China and Russia have a shared commitment in enhancing the bilateral relations. What can you tell us about it, considering the current geopolitical situation right now?
Well, that relationship is getting closer and closer economically, if not politically. Remember, just before Russia invaded Ukraine, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the president of China, Xi Jinping, declared that the friendship between their two countries was without limits. And certainly that without limits is being tested now. Trade between the two countries has risen very, very sharply this year, well up, I think, about more than 26%. And that's good for China, because at the moment, China's exports are not, to the rest of the world, are not doing particularly well. China buys oil from Russia. It's also increasingly going to be buying things like grain and beans as a result of previous negotiations. But we can expect perhaps when the Prime Minister, the Russian Prime Minister, finishes his meeting, which seems to be going on at the moment now in Beijing with President Xi Jinping, we may hear more about that.
Also, Andrew, both the countries pledged to safeguard energy security. What is the likely significance of this meeting?
Well, both sides are friends. They're not allies. I don't think that Russia would come to the aid of China if it were attacked, or for that matter, you know, China has had plenty of opportunities to back Russia in its invasion of Ukraine, but has declined to support it openly so far. I do wonder if they're interested, or if they've been talking about what to do with North Korea. Now, Russia is a member of the United Nations Security Council, like China, and yet it seems to be breaking UN Security Council resolutions forbidding supplying arms or forbidding doing business with North Korea. North Korea is believed to be sending ammunition for use in Ukraine to Russia, and Russia is believed to be supplying technology for satellites and for rockets. Now, China probably just wants to keep North Korea stable. It's had pressure from America and from other countries to try to encourage North Korea, or try to use its influence to sort out North Korea. I think at the moment, especially after you saw what happened when the West tried to get rid of Saddam Hussein, they're probably feeling it's better off to have Kim Jong-un in power, a known force, rather than trying to destabilize him.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us and giving us that information. And moving on, Russia warns Finland of retaliatory measures after Helsinki signed a new defense agreement with Washington. Moscow's ties with the Nordic neighbor have significantly deteriorated since Finland decided to join NATO. DD India correspondent Dasha Chernyshyova is in Moscow with more on this.
Russia has summoned Finland's ambassador on Tuesday over the signing of a new defense agreement between Helsinki and Washington. Russian officials have informed the ambassador that Moscow would take the necessary measures to counter what it sees as aggressive decisions of Finland and its NATO allies. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said in a statement that growing NATO military presence near the Russian border is a grave concern for Moscow and will not be left unanswered. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov earlier said that the possible deployment of the American military infrastructure so close to the Russian border is a threat to Russia and will lead to growing tension between the two countries. Peskov said that Moscow and Helsinki used to have excellent relations. Now that Finland is a member of NATO, Russia has created two new military districts of Leningrad and Moscow. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said on Tuesday that Moscow will boost its army to 1.5 million personnel, proportionate to the foreign threats. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Well, voters in the Democratic Republic of Congo are going to the polls to elect a new president, MPs and local councillors in an election that's being held in the midst of armed conflict in the east of the country. Authorities say voters in 3 territories will not be able to participate in the polls that open today. DD India's correspondent Chris Okamagra has more from Kinshasa.
Wednesday's election in the Democratic Republic of Congo is considered to be crucial for consolidating democracy in this vast country that has been plagued by conflict for close to 3 decades. The incumbent president, Felix Tshisekedi, is among the front-runners in a crowded field of 19 candidates. He has promised to end the armed conflicts, unite the country, and lead it on the path of prosperity. But his critics have accused him of making promises that he doesn't deliver. The president's main challengers are Moise Katumbi, a wealthy businessman, Martin Fayulu, a former presidential candidate, and the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Denis Mukwege. Nearly 44 million people have been registered to vote in this year's polls. But more than 1 million Congolese living in 3 territories racked by conflict will not be able to participate in the elections. The UN says there are more than 120 militia groups fighting over land and the control of minerals in eastern DRC. The conflict has kept millions of Congolese in poverty. They hope the outcome of these elections will turn around their fortunes. Chris Sochamringa in Kinshasa for DD India.
Also, French lawmakers approved a much-debated immigration bill on Tuesday, with both houses of parliament giving their final approval to stricter provisions that reduce welfare payments for foreigners in particular. The bill, termed a compromise reached between Macron's party and the conservative opposition, illustrates the rightward shift in politics in much of Europe as governments try to fend off the rise of the far right by being tougher on immigration. The new bill also introduces migration quotas, making it harder for immigrants' children to become French, and says that dual nationals sentenced for serious crimes against the police could lose French citizenship. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Despite a volcanic eruption late on Monday on a Reykjanes Peninsula, Iceland's Keflavik International Airport was functional as usual amid warning of potential gas pollution in the area of Reykjavik late on Tuesday or Wednesday morning. Tourists expressed a mixture of fascination and concern, but felt reassured by the news of the intensity of the eruption dropping. 11 people were killed and 14 wounded in an attack at a holiday party in Salvatierra in the central Mexican state of Guanajuato. Guanajuato has in recent years become one of the most violent states in the country amid clashes between powerful drug trafficking groups. 2 abandoned miners from Guinea were found in Bogota's El Dorado International Airport on separate dates, the Colombian authorities informed on Tuesday, as search for their families is being carried out by the migration officials. Both children had arrived from Istanbul and had connection to El Salvador. In Rio de Janeiro, Santas extended their sleeves for cycles as they rode around the city to deliver gifts. In an environment-friendly act, members of Zona Sul Bike Club, dressed as Santa Claus, took bikes to deliver gifts this year. Children were seen running towards them as they saw Santas approaching them. Some even posed with the Santas to get their pictures clicked as Christmas memory. And still to come on DD India News Hour. PM Modi invites people to share ideas for Mann Ki Baat to be broadcasted on the eve of the new year. Digital payments in India record a whopping rise, with UPI being major driving force in growth of digital payments. Tamil Nadu continues to reel under devastating aftermath of floods, even as rescue and relief operations continue. A central assessment team to visit the state on Tuesday.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. The Colorado Supreme Court disqualifies former President Donald Trump from ballot in the state's presidential primary next year over his role in the Jan 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. United Nations Security Council delays vote on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Many UN members call for addressing humanitarian situation in Gaza, but the US says resolution fails to sufficiently address Israeli security concerns. Venezuela and Guyana reach truce over territorial dispute, but their Latin American neighbors wonder how long truce will hold. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually interacts with finale participants of Smart India Hackathon late evening, highlights role of youth in nation building. And in sports, South Africa level series 1-1 with the win in second ODI against India. Doordarshan scores maiden ODI ton. And now let's take a look at the Parliament proceedings lined up for the day. In Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Parliament, Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur will move the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill 2023 for consideration and passing. The bill aims to provide for press and registration of periodicals. Also, Law and Justice Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal will move the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners' appointment, condition of service and term of office Bill 2023 for consideration and passing. Meanwhile, Telecom and Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw will move the Telecommunications Bill 2023 for consideration. In Rajya Sabha, the upper house of Parliament, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will move the Central Goods and Services Tax Second Amendment Bill 2023 and the Provisional Collection of Taxes Bill 2023. And as winter session of Parliament is underway, DD India correspondent Vikas Sarthi joins us for more information. Well, Vikas, what are the key bills on Lok Sabha agenda today?
Lipakshi, first of all, the Lok Sabha will discuss Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and two connected bills. The discussion started yesterday and several MPs have given their views on this particular bill, and we expect that this bill will be passed today from the Lok Sabha, and Home Minister Amit Shah will give a detailed reply on the issues which are being discussed in the Lok Sabha. Since this bill also had been sent to the Standing Committee of Home Ministry related affairs, so those inputs were also taken into the consideration. Now these bills are likely to be passed today itself. Later in the day, as you just mentioned, two important bills. One is related to telecommunications and the other is related to registration of periodicals. These bills are also have been listed for today's business list in Lok Sabha. And as far as this telecommunication bill is considered, it is very important. It's a very key. It's a key legislation which government had planned to bring in this particular session. It will include several new technologies, you can say, under telecommunications definition. As of now, the apps which are based on calling apps which are based on internet are not covered in telecommunications definition in our present law. So those calling applications and messaging applications which run through internet will also be included in telecommunications rules and regulations. So this bill will make sure that these are included. And apart from it, you just mentioned that Finance Minister will move that CGST amendment will be passed by the will be discussed by the Rajya Sabha and returned to the Lok Sabha. It's a finance bill. This bill, it's a money bill. It will be returned after discussion. Now this bill provides that there will be a separate tribunal for GST as already being done by the centre through a different legislation. This bill provides the terms and tenure of tribunal head, tribunal chief, and other members of the tribunal. This will provide detailed guidelines that how these tribunal chiefs and other members will be appointed, what will be their term of services. All these things will be provided.
All right. Also, Vikas, can you tell us about the record suspensions yesterday in the Lok Sabha as the standoff between the Treasury and the opposition drags on in the last few days of the winter session?
Right, Lepakshi. In fact, Speaker has been warning these opposition MPs that they should not bring placard in the House. In fact, some of the members tried to enter into the well. They shouted slogans at the Speaker. In fact, Speaker said that it is very unfortunate that in the business advisory meeting, all members were agreed that that placard will not be bring in this new premises. But again, opposition MPs were creating ruckus. They were bringing placards in the House and shouting slogans. So, despite repeated warnings, when opposition MPs continued with their agitation and ruckus in the parliament, yesterday we saw 49 more MPs were suspended from the Lok Sabha. In fact, as of now, 95 opposition MPs from the Lok Sabha have been suspended for their unruly behavior, and their suspension will continue till the end of this winter session.
All right. Also, meanwhile, the BJP looks to push through the three key criminal law amendment bills in the CEC bill that the Rajya Sabha passed last week. What's the status there, Vikas?
Right, Lepakshi. So these three bills which are related to criminal justice system, these bills were taken up yesterday. Some MPs have given their inputs on the clauses of these three particular bills, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and other connected bills. We expect that Home Minister will give a detailed reply in the afternoon on the discussion which took place yesterday. As of now, the bill related to election commissioners are concerned, it has already been passed by the Rajya Sabha. Lepakshi, Supreme Court had given a guideline that how should be Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners should be appointed, since the previous law was challenged before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court set aside that procedure and had given a guideline how to appoint a Chief Election Commissioner. Now government has brought this particular bill which gives complete guideline that how the consultation process will take place. There will be a committee headed by Prime Minister. Another union minister will be part of this committee, and leader of opposition will also be a member in this panel. So this three-member panel will decide who should be the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners. So to replace the existing guidelines provided by the Supreme Court, this bill have been brought. Earlier it was passed by the upper house, the Rajya Sabha, and now Lok Sabha will take up it for consideration.
All right. Thank you so much, Vikas, for that information from there. And moving on, the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra traversed through the Anantapur district of South Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. As part of the program, short films of the schemes implemented by the central government were shown to the public through the campaign vehicle. Similarly, the officials of the respective departments explained to the people about the central government schemes. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra pledge was also taken during the event. And across India, a transformative movement is taking roots. The Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, the largest ever outreach initiative of Government of India, is bringing the promise of empowerment and a brighter future to the doorsteps of all Indians. In this series, the Yatra, or the journey, reached the Balian Panchayat of Udhampur in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The event was held at Sant Ishwar Bharatiya Vidya Mandir School, where locals welcomed the IEC van and listened to the message of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his vision of making India a developed nation by 2047. Government departments set up stalls to advertise various welfare schemes. Resource persons shared information about the government schemes with the visitors. The Indian government's flagship program, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, is being undertaken across the country with an aim to attain saturation of government schemes by ensuring that the benefits of the schemes reach the intended beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. And the Health Minister of the southern Indian state of Kerala, Veena George, said that there is no need to worry even though the cases of COVID are increasing in the state. Kerala witnessed an increase in the number of COVID cases in the month of November itself. Accordingly, the Health Department of the Kerala government had taken measures and guidelines were also issued. The State Medical Officers Conference also instructed to take action. And the COVID-19 subvariant in parts of Kerala is spreading. State health ministers conducted a review meeting yesterday. So DD India correspondent Sam Kadamanata joins us on phone line from Kochi in Kerala. Well, Sam, Kerala sees surge in the cases with active cases nearing 1,800. What is the current situation in the state right now?
Yes, Livakshi. Presently, according to the state health minister, there is nothing to worry. Everything is under control. The vast majority of the current active cases are at home with mild symptoms only. All death cases except one were over 65 years of age. They also had serious comorbidities such as heart diseases, kidney diseases, diabetes and cancer, etc. The JN1 Omicron variant was confirmed in only one sample obtained. The person was cured. Availability of the isolation ward, rooms, oxygen beds, ICU beds and ventilators in hospitals has been ensured. Presently, all the situation is under control.
Also, Sam, the Union Health Ministry has asked all the states to remain on alert. What are the measures being taken by the authorities to prevent it from spreading?
Under the leadership of Kerala State Health Minister, the current COVID situation and the hospital system were evaluated. Surveillance will be strengthened in the state. Department of Health and Department of Medical Education will carry out coordination activities. Hospitals should provide special facilities for COVID patients. Non-serious COVID patients should be treated in the district themselves without being referred to the medical college. For this, district should set aside fixed beds for COVID. ICUs and ventilators should be ensured as per the existing Plan A and B. Dialysis patients should take steps to avoid interruption of dialysis if they get infected with COVID. It is recommended that only those with symptoms of COVID should be tested for COVID. Special consideration should be given to the seriously ill, elderly and pregnant women. In case of COVID positive, treatment should be ensured at the treating hospital itself. Hospital staff and hospital visitors must wear masks properly. People with serious illness and pregnant women should also wear masks. And there is no other instruction about the mandatory mask wear.
All right, Sam, thank you so much for that information, as there is no need to worry right now. And moving on, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the finale participants of Smart India Hackathon on Tuesday late evening via video conferencing. Smart India Hackathon is a nationwide initiative to provide students a platform to solve the pressing problems of ministries and departments of the government, industries and other organizations. This year, the grand finale of SIH is being held from 19th to 23rd of December. Addressing the participants, Prime Minister highlighted the role of youth in nation building.
स्मार्ट इंडिया हैकाथॉन में मेहनत आप लोग करते हैं, लेकिन सीखने का अवसर मुझे भी मिलता है। इसलिए मैं कोशिश करता हूं कि जब भी स्मार्ट इंडिया हैकाथॉन हो रहा हो आपसे संवाद जरूर करूं। आज भी आप सुबह से ही जुटे हैं, इसके बावजूद आपके चेहरे पर एक ताजगी है, एक उत्साह है। यही ताजगी, यही उत्साह, यही आत्मविश्वास, नेशन बिल्डिंग की इच्छा शक्ति आज भारत की युवा शक्ति की पहचान बन चुकी है।
And moving on, as the heavy rains continue to lash parts of South Indian state of Tamil Nadu, the state chief minister appealed to the central government for assistance in light of the devastating impact caused by the heavy rainfall. Indian Army and Air Force helicopters conducted relief operations, airdropping over 10 tons of essential supplies. They have successfully evacuated stranded individuals, including women and children, from isolated areas and rooftops. Rescue boats are taking several sorties to take those who are in the floods to the shelters. Tragically, the floods have claimed the lives of 10 individuals so far. A central assessment team is set to visit state on Wednesday to evaluate the extent of the floods' impact on the affected areas. And DD correspondent Anbarasan joins us from Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. Well, what is the current situation there right now?
After the devastated rain in the southern districts of Tamil Nadu, the water level has been continuously receding, and most part of the Tamil river and the shore banks, the water has been continuously receding, and the relief and rescue work has been continuously in full swing. And yesterday, last night, the Chief Minister M.K. Stalin met Prime Minister Narendra Modi and asked about the 2,000 crore for the relief, for the temporary relief to the relief works, and also he asked the national calamity announcement for these 4 southern districts, and also the stranded passengers in the Sri Vaikuntham railway station has been fully evacuated, and they sent to the Vanji Maniyachi railway station. From there they sent back to the Chennai Egmore Central railway station. And also the central assessment team, which set to assess the flood relief, flood situation in the Tuticorin district today. And also the Chief Minister is tomorrow planned to visit the relief works in the Tuticorin.
Well, Ambarasan, as you said that the relief and rescue measures are going on in full swing, what are the problems being faced by the general public there?
Particularly the weather condition and the water level is still not receded in some places. So the national forces, NDRF and SDRF are deploying their helicopters, and also they are airdropping their food to the people, and particularly the pregnant woman has been evacuated from the stranded from the Sri Vaikuntham railway station. So particularly the water level in some particular parts of the banks of Tamrabarni river has been still not yet receded fully. So that is the situation. Is a little difficult to the relief forces to reach there and provide a relief work, and also the evacuation work also has been delayed due to that.
Well, thank you so much, Amrasan, for giving us that update from there. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited people to share their ideas and suggestions for his program Mann Ki Baat, which will be broadcasted on the 31st of December on DD India. People can share their views on the MyGov website. People can also dial the toll-free number 1-800-117800 and record their message for the PM, or can give a missed call on 1922. The phone lines will remain open till the 29th of December. In India, the digital payments have significantly increased in the recent years. The total digital payment transactions volume increased from 2,071 crore in financial year 2017-18 to 13,462 crore in financial year 2022-23. The Unified Payments Interface is one of the leading contributors in the increase of the digital payments in India. India's Central Reserve Police Force has organized the Local Football Cup 2023 in the Indian Union Territory, Jammu and Kashmir, in collaboration with the J&K Sports Council. The tournament promises to showcase some of the best football talent in the region, providing a platform for players to compete at a high level and for fans to come together to celebrate the sport. And still to come on DD India News Hour. The UK government says a 14th round of negotiations with India on a free trade deal will take place next month. Stay with us as we get you an update on the latest negotiations. And we'll get you details about what LSE professor has to say about reforms and what's driving India's economic engine towards sustainable growth. And it was raining money at IPL 2024 auction. Aussie duo Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins makes the biggest splash, while Indian uncapped players also fetch good money.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. And moving on, the UK government says a 14th round of negotiations with India on a free trade deal will take place next month. That is January 2024. Britain's Parliament has received an update of the latest negotiation, as Ollie Barrett reports from London.
The update comes in the form of a written ministerial statement from Greg Hands, who is Minister of State for Trade Policy. He says the 13th round of free trade agreement talks wrapped up on the 15th of December, with negotiations having taken place in London and in Delhi in what is described as a hybrid fashion. The minister says that a comprehensive and ambitious FTA remains the goal, and he insists that a balanced deal can strengthen the economic links between London and India. Greg Hands' update says that the 13th round of talks focused on issues around goods, services and investment, and that the UK government, in his words, will not compromise on things like environmental, animal welfare, food and labour protections. And his statement stresses that there are no plans to change our immigration policy. The minister has confirmed that the next round of FTA talks will start in January 2024. Ollie Barrett in London, reporting for DD India.
And moving on, according to a recent IMF report, India is projected to contribute more than 16% to global growth and has emerged as one of the star performers. Jessica Taneja spoke with Robin Burgess, economics professor at the London School of Economics, about potential reforms and what's driving India's economic engine towards a sustainable growth.
How do you look at India's economic growth in the future? It's going to be the third largest economy. It's projected to become the third largest economy. It's still pacing. And what more do you think India needs to do to have more reforms? It already expressed that there have to be certain multilateral institutions that need reformation, including the United Nations, in order to be able to address the needs of the emerging economy, aka the global south as well. India has taken a stand at that point, but with its economic engines now working in full capacity, what do you think would aid that growth?
I think there's a couple of broad areas. One is this very simple transition from agriculture into services and manufacturing. And that is obviously a source of growth because people become more productive. But I think the bigger factor is once they move out of agriculture into some form of firm, India has been successful in having a huge mass of small firms and then some big firms. And there's going to be a need for sort of some of those small firms to be encouraged to grow to become bigger firms. And that sort of, people talk about infrastructure, they talk about regulation, but that sort of, I guess, encouragement of entrepreneurship is going to be a big factor.
You're watching DD India News and time now for some sports news. ODI World Cup performers and uncapped Indians were in a big demand at IPL 2024 auction. Australia's Mitchell Starc became the most expensive player ever to be sold at the IPL auction when the Kolkata Knight Riders acquired the Pacers' services for 24.75 crores. Australian captain Pat Cummins went to Sunrisers Hyderabad for whopping 20.5 crores. Rovman Powell was bought by the Rajasthan Royals for a price tag of rupees 7 crore, 40 lakh, while Australia's World Cup star Travis Head was snapped up by Sunrisers Hyderabad for 6.8 crore rupees. Meanwhile, Harry Brook was picked up at 4 crore rupees by Delhi Capitals. Besides that, names like Karun Nair, Manish Pandey, Steven Smith and Relly Rozov went unsold. And South Africa pulled level in the 3-match ODI series against India with an 8-wicket win at the St. George's Oval in Giberia on Tuesday. South Africa bundled out India for a total of 211 runs in 46.2 overs before managing to chase down the target in 42.3 overs. Batting first, India lost Rituraj Gaikwad on the second ball of the match after being put into bat first. Sai Sudarshan and Tilak Verma added 42 runs for the second wicket. Sudarshan then added 68 runs with captain KL Rahul and scored his second consecutive 50 in the process. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.